Hey there, everyone. My name is Jonathon Silva. Welcome to our Lunch with the Nerds event. For this event, we're going to take a look at the top 5 Power Automate features that you can just start using right away when working with Power Automate in the cloud from Microsoft. So without further ado, we're going to get ahead and get started here with our session today, starting off with a little bit of introduction, who I am, some of my background, and then we're going to just jump right into it from there. Again, my name is Jonathon Silva. I am a trainer and content manager at Pragmatic Works Training. We are a company that is dedicated to providing learning and educational opportunities to individuals and companies around the world to help you master skills to be able to pretty much do your job just more efficiently than ever before. And for myself, I am a Microsoft certified trainer that specializes in what we call the Power Platform. If you're unfamiliar with the Power Platform, hopefully you know a little bit about it. That's why you're here today. But Power Automate is one massive piece of the Power Platform. For me, it's the glue that runs the whole system, that holds the system together. It's the metro line, the subway system that connects all the other pieces like Power BI, Power Apps, Power Virtual Agent, and Power Pages. All of those can work really seamlessly with Power Automate, along with pretty much anything else that comes from Microsoft. So it's a really amazing feature that we have that we're going to take a look at today. A little bit about my personal professional background. I'm a former high school teacher. I spent just about 10 years teaching in a high school setting, mostly in your upper level courses, economics and history level classes. And I love to continue to teach and to learn. So this career field for me was something that I absolutely gravitated towards when I had the opportunity to take a different path. So I have some information on screen there about how you can get in contact with me. If you'd like to connect via LinkedIn, I'm absolutely happy to do that with anybody to try to help you as much as I can into the future, answering questions and all that kind of good stuff. I do want to say I am joined today by Devin Knight, who's going to help me work with our chat. There he is on screen there. Good morning, Devin. To help me answer some questions in our chat. So if you have anything that shows up, go ahead and Devin will do his best to try to answer those. He may even put some on screen as well to see if there's anything I can answer on the fly that does populate as we get through that process. All right. So as we start off with our session here today, the big focus, of course, is Power Automate, right? And some of the top features. So before we get into that, it's probably worth mentioning what Power Automate is. And it's at its very basic tenet, Power Automate, it's workflow automation. It's our ability to automate tasks. And most of the time, we're choosing to automate the repetitive, the routine, the mundane daily tasks that we have to do that, let's be honest, we probably just don't want to do anymore, right? We'd rather set it up so it just happens automatically. So we're not worried about going back and doing these every single time. So it allows us to add in some of our on-premises applications. If we start getting into Power Automate Desktop, even further opportunities there. We can streamline some approval processes and have a full integration with pretty much anything Microsoft that is available to us. So as we work with Power Automate, we are going to focus today on what I think are the top 5 features. So the topics that we're going to cover together today are there on screen. We're going to start off with an understanding of solutions inside of Power Automate and the connection between solutions in our environments. And now we can work with that within Dataverse and Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, all of those together into one nice little package. What we're also going to take a look at is approvals, right? This is something that a lot of us come to Power Automate for, to set up some approvals to make it easier to go down and get everything organized. And so we don't have to do that on paper anymore, right? We don't have to worry about sending out emails all the time. We let that process go by itself and then move on from there. Our third big topic we're going to talk about today is the Compose data operation, or the action to use Compose, which is going to allow us to do a lot of work and make our flow work nice and easy. And it's great for troubleshooting. So we're going to take a look at that. And then from there, we'll start to look at nulls and how we can work with nulls with Power Automate, how we can check for nulls. We can continue our flow as we move with nulls. and make sure that our flow is working the exact way we want it to go, even if we have a null in a cell or, excuse me, a list, an array, anything that populates there. And then finally, our big kind of ta-da and our last major feature here is working with a trigger condition, how to use trigger conditions, how to create trigger conditions, and why they are so great for us to utilize within the flows that we're working with here in Power Automate. So let's get started with our first one of the day. And by the way, these aren't in one specific order or another. These are just the big ones I wanted to make sure we're covering for today. The very first one, solutions. Now, when we think about a solution, it's important to understand that a solution is part of an environment. My goodness, excuse me. And we think about an environment is a location to store projects, right? To store work. What our solutions allow us to do is to essentially create a nice little neat little package that we can keep inside of an environment that will allow us to move pieces from one environment to another. So I really like this analogy here that I have on screen of that image of, you're just basic, drawer there, right? You have 3-4 drawers there, that little cabinet there that you might have. And each one of those drawers can be an environment. And inside of the drawer, you might have some folders, you might have some, 3-ring binders or stuff that contain specific projects that you're working on. And as you work through the progression of that project between the first time you sit down and look at it and you're just really just kind of producing the basics, the raw items, you have it in one folder and then you're like, okay, that's done. Let's move it into the next step where we're now working with other people on our team, or we're testing different things that are out there for us to take a look at, right? Every time we want to move that from one environment or one drawer to another, we have that nice little folder that gets everything all organized in and just easily just drop it in. Solutions work the exact same way. It's a really great way for us to be able to streamline the production, test, and full deployment of anything we're working with and we're building with. All right. So when we look at understanding solutions, it's really also important to know what comes inside of a solution. So things we can build in a solution are flows with Power Automate, apps from Power Apps, virtual agent or chat bots. We can have tables from Dataverse. And what I think is the best part about it, and most importantly, environment variables. And what environment variables allow us to do is essentially create dynamic content that can be utilized, especially here in Power Automate, utilized within different steps. And every time we use it within our flow and then pass it into a new environment through our solution, all we do is update the environment variable, and then every single piece of dynamic content that points to that variable is automatically updated as well. So it's a really great way to have all the control there. You'll notice there on screen, I have a little one there. It's like, I called it my admin email. So every time I want to go point to the admin, I just put that dynamic content in there and it'll automatically capture that email and use that each time. I can update who the admin is if I need to inside of a different environment, and boom, it's all done. Every single action, every single step there that is using that admin email will also be updated with it. It's a really great feature. So one, we're going to take a look at how to explore as we work through our solution build. And then when we take a look at actually moving solutions from one environment to another, it's important for us to understand how solutions work and the different types of solutions we can have. We have an unmanaged or a managed solution as our option working within them. Now, with an unmanaged solution, what we're doing is essentially we're creating like the first phase of the project, right? This is where we're building out our projects, building out different pieces here, and trying to really develop the flows, the apps, the tables, whatever we're doing within it. This is where we can start to add, edit, change, update, delete different components within the project in that solution as we move from one to another, right? And we're just kind of building in there. When we are at a point where we think that our work, all right, our components in that solution is ready to go, and we're ready to go have a full-fledged test or move it into our full production environment, what we'll do is we can export that solution as a managed solution. And what a managed solution is essentially this final project, right? This final product that we're working with. And what it does is it locks down those components so they're not going to be able to be edited into the future. We can look at the solution, we can look at what's inside of it, but everything that's in there is staying put. If you ever want to go back and make any changes because you found a bug or something just not working, you're gonna have to go all the way back to the beginning where we started in that unmanaged solution, start from there and go through the full movement again. Okay, so something to think about as you work with solutions. You know, I really like solutions as a great organizing piece as well. So it keeps everything that I have for one project or another all nice and neat into one little location. So what we'll do is we're going to jump over to make.powerautomate.com and see how we can actually develop a solution from scratch. And then from there, we'll go ahead and start building inside of that solution. Now, I do want to note that everything that you'll be seeing me do here today has been already captured and placed inside of the course files for you. So if you go into our little description here within YouTube, you'll be able to see a link for a form. Fill out that form and you can get access to everything that I'm working with in the final product in a solution that I've exported for you. All right, so here at make.powerautomate.com, okay, this is where I am already logged in, as you can see. All right. Right now, I'm just simply on my homepage. What I'm going to navigate down to is the solution. So down here on the bottom left, I'm going to come and select solutions right there. And from here, this is where we can create solutions. We can import, we can export solutions all right here. What you'll notice is I already have the one I just mentioned that's in our comments, excuse me, in our descriptions here. This complete one. So you can go ahead and take a look at that one. But while we're here together, we're going to create a new one right now. So I'm going to select new solution. And for this one, we can call this one I'm just going to come up with something, top 5 Power Automate features. Okay, something like that, right? And just there's our display name, just coming up with the name of the solution itself. Here's the name that's going to be stored in here. You can see without our spaces. And what we can choose is a publisher here and how we're going to store all the data within it. Now, there are some publishers, some default publishers that you can use. It's not always a best practice to use the default publisher because it does, we can share some connections back and forth between different solutions. So as a best practice, we're going to come in here and choose a new publisher. And for this one, I think I'm just going to call this our top, let's call it, it's top 5 features. Okay, that's fine. Or a display name, we can call this top 5, something with just the name where it's stored, features this way, if you want to even put it there as well. And the one thing I like to do about our publishers here is the prefix and making sure we have a really identifiable prefix here to work with. So every time we produce a new item, a new component within the solution, it's going to have this prefix associated with it. So we know where all of our projects are lining up. So this one we'll call maybe top 5 Power Automate, right? Something like that. And you'll notice that here we get is a preview of the object name that we build inside of the solution. So that prefix will automatically be attached to everything inside of it. Right. So it's nice to be able to see that everything's all working together for one specific project, one specific thing that you're trying to accomplish here. So I'll go ahead and select save. And now that I have my new publisher done, I can then use that publisher, okay, here inside of my solution. So now my publisher should be available. And there it is, my top 5 features. And then I can go ahead and create my solution right there. And now that I've created my solution, we can come in here and look inside of the solution itself. You notice there's nothing there. Obviously, we just created it from scratch. So this is where we can start to build all of our apps with Power Apps, right? We can do our chatbots with Virtual Agent. All of our flows come here. Power Automate and our tables with Dataverse can all be stored here. And we can build directly in here as well just by selecting New. Right. So for right now, what I want to do is I'm not going to build a flow just yet, but I would like to show you where we can get our environment variables. If you come down here to more inside of a solution, this is where you can declare an environment variable. And what, again, this environment variable allows us to do is to essentially create content, create items here that we can pass values through. So for this one, maybe I want to put in my admin, I'll call it admin email, right? Something simple. And the description, I think that pretty much gives it away. So maybe we don't need a description. Maybe we can change the data type here to, let's say, text, right? If we're actually putting in an email address. But you can notice that you can add in a lot of different data types here within your solution and your environment variable to pass through, like a data source. So a connection into SharePoint or into a SQL server that's automatically stored. So when you move it from one environment to the other, you already have that built in. You could do the same thing of like a password. There's your secret that can be passed through as well. For this one, I'm just going to choose text, and I'll put my email address in here. Okay, and we'll just use it like that. Now, that's my default value. Later on, when I come in here and edit, if I want to pass this into another environment and I have a new admin, I could just change this right here and to a new value, and then it'll switch the default value with the new value each time automatically for us. And that's the great thing about working with our solutions here in Power Automate, Power Apps, wherever you're building, right? Within this environment, you get to pass these back and forth using these environment variables, right? So what a great feature we have for us, and that we can start to utilize and build with as we go forward. So there's our solutions, right? That's the kind of starting point. It's a great place for us to begin when we are working with new projects and starting to build off of, because from this point on, everything that I do that works with a single scenario, a single project, can now be stored and contained just in here. And if there's ever a time where you forget to put in your solution, or you made it after you did a couple flows or apps, you can just come here and choose add existing. And then you can choose which Canvas apps, model-driven apps you want, which flows you want, and then go ahead and point to them and bring them here inside of your solution. All right, so that's our first great feature here within Power Automate, working with solutions, understanding how solutions work. Our next feature to take a look at that we're going to go through in our progression here today are approval flows. What approval flows allow us to do, and these are honestly, this is what brings us here to Power Automate. For a lot of us, that's like why we're here. What they allow us to do is quickly and easily manage the process of approvals, maybe from some documents, some services that may be occurring within the organization itself. And you can set up an approval flow to automatically handle each and every step that you might be doing on paper right now. One of the great things about our approvals is they are very flexible. We can put them pretty much wherever we want within the process of a flow, wherever the step we want that to occur. And then we can design what we want to occur after that approval is interacted with. We can assign our approvals with our Office 365 users and user groups. We can have it sent to one person, multiple people, different options. There's a lot of different choices for us when working with approvals that we can start working with right away. And one of the great things about approvals is you can be, adding in dynamic content anywhere you see fit. You can access different items and variables and expressions that may be populating already inside of that flow or that you create to put within your approval so it looks nice and neat as well. So when we work with approvals, right, as we kind of start off the process, it's helpful to know that you have some flexibility in how you do this. There are technically 3 different approval options for us within Power Automate. Now, one of them is called the approvals, like the approvals connector, but the others provide us an opportunity of working with approvals, just choosing how our users interact with that approval. So one of them that I know is very popular and I build with some of our clients all the time is the action to send an email with options. When you choose that, this is part of your Office 365 Outlook connector. When you choose that, you can decide who it's going to be sent to, right? An individual or multiple users. You can add in your subject, and you can pretty much design an email very similar to what you normally do. However, you can add in different buttons inside of that email and decide what that button says, the different options. You can see there on the little screenshot I took. And so you can choose if it says choice 1, 2, or 3, yes, no, maybe, accept, deny, affirm, reject, whatever you want to have. And then from that point on, based upon whichever selection was made, you can design the next series of actions in your flow to go down those specific paths. So you get a lot of different options with send email, as well as the other approvals that we have, like if you want that approval to go into Teams. So in the send an email with option, that notice only goes via email. That's the only place to interact with it. The Teams post a choice of options as a flow bot to a user only goes into Microsoft Teams. And it allows you to send in a message that allows the end user, whoever that may be sent to interact with your approval. Now, what I've done is I just typed in like the word approve or the word reject, but you can add in whatever options you want, just like with the send an email with options action. And then from there, you can choose who the recipient is, the message, the headline, the layout. You can add stuff in there to have your users interact with that approval. Now, if you're not really sure where your user is going to interact, where you're like, oh, maybe they don't check their email all the time, or we know we definitely don't use Teams. The approvals connector built into Power Automate is your blast the approval to every last location and hope they interact with it in one place or another, right? Using the approvals connector, and you can see there's 3 options that we can take when we get in there. It will send your approval via email. It'll send it into Teams. It will allow your user to interact with it directly inside of Power Automate, and you can interact with that approval in the Power Automate app on your mobile device, so on your cell phone, no matter if you have a Windows phone, an Android, or an iPhone. Every last one of them, you can get that Power Automate application, and you can interact with your approvals straight from there. So there's a lot of different places that you can build out approvals and then decide, okay, what location do you want your end user to be working with that approval once they get through that process? So let's go ahead and build out some approvals, right? What we're going to do is build out from a pre-built flow that I have set up, ready to go here within the cloud, and then I'll eventually add it in to our solution that we're going to be building with already here. So I'm going to come back out of our solutions. I'm going to go to the My Flows area here in our navigation. And I have a flow here called device order form to SharePoint list. So this is the flow that I'm going to work with. And I'm going to explain how this works here in a second, show you what it's doing, and then explain how I want to make this better. Okay. So the scenario that I have built here for a few of our different flows that I'm going to show you here is that I have a form built with Microsoft Form, just a simple device ordering form. It's very, very basic, very simple. Oh, of course, as I'm on this, it's going to ask me to log in. Of course it does, right? It's going to ask the user's employee, like their name. So the employee name, although it's automatically captured, we're going to ask for it anyway. It's a text field. We have, in this case, what device would they like to order? Okay, it's just a choice column here. In this case, in this basic one, I just have a single choice option, but we can set up our flow to work with multiple selected options if we want. Just adds in a few extra steps within the flow. We have a reason for a request and just simply put in the date. That's it. That's all I'm looking at is 4 questions here for my user to go ahead and interact with. They want a new laptop. They want a new desk chair, whatever it might be. This is the way to go ahead and request that. And what I have my flow doing, as you can see here, is when a response is submitted, I'm going to get the details of the response, and then I'm just going to create an item on a list in SharePoint. That's it. That's as simple as that. You can see I'm mapping some dynamic content from Microsoft Form to add into SharePoint. I have a little bit of expression language here for my dates for the data already. And on that SharePoint list, which looks like this is the final outcome I get. Every time someone adds in a new request, they will add in the fields to employee name, device, reason for request, and date of request. Okay? Simple as that. They're going to add those fields in. What I've added in as well, some extra pieces, is our approval. Like, has that request been approved? And then we can make some decisions from there. All right. So very, very simply, that's how our flow is working. You can see that it works quite well. I've had different employees that are adding in different pieces here over the last about month or so, and it works great. But what if we have a little bit extra in here? What if we get something from, say, our team or our management team at the office, and they say, well, that's great. I'm glad you're doing all that, but I want to make sure that every time they request something, it just doesn't automatically, like they don't just get it, right? I want to be able to add in an approval because sometimes things are just expensive, or we just have a backlog, or it's just difficult to go access things. So what we can do is add to this flow itself and insert an approval process to make it so that every new request that comes in goes through that approval, and based upon the outcome of the approval, we can see the different actions from there. All right. So what I'm going to do here is take a look at the different approvals that we have options with, and then we're going to really use the approvals connector. So as I had in the slide there, if you want to add an approval here, now you got to think, where am I going to put this approval? Probably before I create the item, right? That would make a little bit of sense here. So I'm going to come up here, and before we create the item on the list, I'm going to add an action right there. And here is where we can go ahead and choose to send an email if we want to. And you can come down here, send an email with options. And if you choose this one, you can see all of the options we have that allows us to essentially create an approval in that way. We could send this into Teams, like I mentioned earlier, where we can post a choice of options as a flow bot to a user. That's an option for us. It goes straight into Teams. For the one I want to showcase here today is the approvals connector. So I'll go ahead and delete that step there and add that in, because it gives us just more opportunities to interact with the approval. All right. So if you just come in here and search approval, what we are going to be able to get down is to our different approval options here. Now, if you look at our approval options, we have 3 of them within this approvals connector. And the 3 options we have are pretty much doing the same thing, just kind of split how they're placed. The one that I will choose is this start and wait for an approval right here, which starts the approval process, pauses the flow at that moment, and will not do a single thing after until the approval has been interacted with one way or another. Okay, that's the one I'm going to choose. Now, the other 2 options we have are essentially doing the same thing, just separating pieces out. Like we have this create an approval where this is really our first step in the approval process. If we split it out, create the approval, do a whole series of actions. And then once these other actions are done, we can go ahead and wait for the approval to complete before we continue down that path. Right? If you're adding in different reminders or other pieces along with it, this is a really great one because you can add in a link to that approval later on to remind somebody, hey, you still haven't interacted with the approval. Like, let's get to it kind of stuff. All right. So for today, we're going to just do start and wait for an approval because it just pauses that flow right then and there for us. It gives us a great chance of taking a look at things. So I'm going to choose that. And now when we go through our start and wait for an approval, I need to select the approval type here that I want to work with. And by looking at, you can see we have these 4 options available from the beginning. The one that I like to use most is this first to respond option. So if I send out this approval to a team, to a group of individuals, whoever responds to it first, whether that is accept or reject, that's the answer, right? Get this approval done with, done right there. If I send it to one person, once they respond, then it's over as well, right? The other option we have here with approve, reject, everyone must approve. This is where you have maybe you have a board of execs, or you have a board and everybody unanimously has to approve in order for this to go and actually get passed. So that's where you would choose that option. These other options here, the custom responses, this is where you can decide the words that get passed through the approval. Right now, approve and reject, right, are the words that you will see. Okay, those are the 2 options. If you don't like those words, you can create some custom responses like yes or no or 1 or 2 or red or blue, whatever you want to pass through there as your approval option. Okay, but for this one, I'm going to choose first to respond, approve, reject. And there it goes. And now this is where we can design the approval for ourselves. This is where we can choose what actually goes inside of the approval. Now, what you'll see here in our title, okay, this is our mandatory fields here. For the title, we can come in here and say, just something simple. Do you approve this order? Right? Something pretty simple like that as far as the title that goes out to the individual. Assign to. This is where I can assign this approval to a certain individual. Like if I wanted to assign it to someone that's working inside of our flow, that we can, if we have any variables that can get passed in here, we can do that. Or in here in this assign to, I can pass in a manager, right? Maybe I want to automatically capture in the manager of the individual and assign it to them. That's a really quick way to doing that. If I just go up here and insert a new step above it, there's an action for our users here that we can go ahead and grab here. So I'm going to come in here and choose an action right before it. And if you just search in users, right, for Office 365, there is a really great action here called Get Manager. And what Get Manager allows you to do is just pass in the user principal name or ID of an individual, and it'll look inside of Office 365, go up the tree and find their manager automatically. And you can pass that into this as well. So if I wanted to pass that in, I can put in maybe the employee name, or the responder's email will be even better here because that's automatically captured and that's our user principal name. And then I can add that here and assign that. So that can, my manager, he's in a call right now, so he's not going to be able to do this, but I could pass that in right here if I wanted to, and you can see all the information I can pass in, right? I can go find all that information about my manager or whoever's manager that actually interacts with the form and pass that there, like their email, right? Or I can take their display name, I can get their job title, I can get all of this, their mail, all of that to pass through there if I wanted to. In this case, because we are testing and I want to test it with you here, I'm just going to put in my own email. So I'll pass my email here as well and go, there it is. And you can see we have our semicolon, so we can separate this out and I can send this to multiple individuals if I want to. Now in the next part down here, the details, this is essentially where we are setting up the body of the message. Okay, so what do we want our manager or whoever's interacting with this approval to see as far as the details of the item or the form, whatever we're doing? Okay, so in this case, I will say the employee, and I'll use some dynamic content here to go grab the employee's name. Okay, that's one of the answers from our field, from our form there, so we can grab that automatically. We can also, if we go down one, let's see, what else should we get? The device. And we can choose the answer to the question device. We can put in our reason for request. And we can add that in here. There's our reason for request. And if we wanted to, we can even add in our date of request, right? If it was something that's absolutely necessary. Date of request. And I can add that in here as well. So I can put in the date of request and have that pass through. What we can also do is add in some different features in here, right? We can add in the link to whatever data gets passed in if we want to find that to the actual submission. If we want, we add an item description, right? We can actually add in a lot of different pieces in here that we want to pass through our flow. Okay, so once we have our response done, okay, when a new response is submitted, get the response details and then wait for an approval. Okay, if we had a link, we could absolutely throw it in there. Okay, so the next thing here we can do in here is we can say, all right, how do we want this flow to be interacted with later on? Do we want to have our item already created just no matter what? Or do we need to change how this is interacted with based upon the response of the manager or whoever's interacting? So we can come in here and add in a new step right here, and we can add in a condition. And every time we work with our approvals, we're always going to follow that with a condition control. based on the selected option, the outcome of the approval, whatever gets passed through there, then we can go down one path or another within our flow itself. So I'm going to add in a condition control right here. And then I can come in here to our condition and I can pass through what I want to check. The way the condition control works is just check some type of logical sequence here and then see how we can move on it from there. So choose a value here. We're going to choose the outcome of the approval. So the outcome right there. If the outcome of the approval is equal to approve, we're choosing approve here because that is one of the options here within our approval type, right? Approve or reject. Okay, we want to make sure it's the exact word there itself because that's what's getting checked. So if the outcome of the approval is equal to approve, if my manager said, yep, that's exactly what we want to do, we want to approve it, then what should we do? So let's think about this for a second. If it's been approved, we should probably let that individual know that it's been approved, right? Send them an email, whoever requested the device. Hey, your request has been approved. You'll get it soon. And then what we can do is we can go into SharePoint. And when this item is created, we can update that approval to yes, if it has been approved, and put in the date as well. Or if it's not been approved, just don't update it. Let them know it's not been approved and they can't do anything from there. Okay, so that's our step here. And actually what we also want to do is, I made a mistake here, is this create item, we actually want to put that before the approval because they're going to always put the request. We don't want to just not write in the request period. We want to capture that for some data. So I can drag that up and it's going to take a second here. I'm going to go step by step here and drag that up here. So we have that create item already happening before the approval. And now what I can actually do here is if I wanted to, we can even come in here, and now that this create item is ahead of our approval, I can actually point to that specific item itself. There's a link to item action here on SharePoint that I can point to right there and just say, hey, do you want to see the full request details? So click the link. Let's see, to see the full request details. Right? So I'm just adding in some extra pieces there. So now I think that looks even better. The new response is submitted, get the response details, get the manager of the individual that submitted the response. Also create an item that we can then add to our device order list. Once it's been created, start the approval process. If they approve of the request, what do we do? Well, let's go ahead and let them know first and foremost. So we're going to come in here and send an email, okay, using Office 365 Outlook, because that's what my work email is, but we could choose these other ones if you wanted to go another avenue there. So I'm going to do send an email Office 365 Outlook. And who am I going to send it to? That's a big question, right? Do I type in myself, or can I dynamically send it back to whoever created the form? And yeah, that's our response. Exactly what we want to do here. So we want to come in here and go find the get response details, the responder's email, send it back to whoever that is. So if it's me, someone else, make sure it gets directly to them. And then in our subject of the email itself, we can say something like, your recent device order request. And then in our body, let's go ahead and say hi, and work in some dynamic content here. We'll put an employee name, and we'll take that from SharePoint. We could do it from either the form or SharePoint, either one. We can say this email is to inform you that your request for the device, and I'll put in the device itself. We'll do it from SharePoint this time. So we can choose our device value. It's device value because it is a choice column. And if it is a choice column, we want to make sure we're choosing the exact option that was chosen. So the value of the selected choice. So that's why we're going to choose device value for our dynamic content. Okay, I'll go ahead and click on that one. And we'll also come in here and say we can do some like made on off on, and we'll put in some expression language here. And we'll do some formatting of date time here so we can fix the way that our request date is appearing. And we'll go ahead and add in our request dates. These are some extra things. If you want to see more on how to use expressions and formatting date time specifically, check out, I have some YouTube videos here on YouTube as well that kind of walk you through that. So definitely take a look at those. And I can put in date of request just like that. And we can format that so it returns in the month, day, year format. That looks great in SharePoint. And I'll go ahead and add that like that. All right. And I'll put, oops, I want to go here and say was approved. And so now I can come down and say, please expect delivery in the next 3 to 5 days. All right, something simple like that, pretty quick. So now if it's yes, go ahead and let them know. Add an action here. What we want to do is go back to SharePoint. If it's been added, good. Now, because it's been approved, update the item in SharePoint. So I'm going to come here and do that myself. Update item. And let's go point back to that created item. So now I can choose my site address. There's my training site there. I can go my list name. There's my device order. The ID I want to point to is going to be the same ID that was created when we first created the item on the device order list. So we're going to point to that. And the other option that I must have in here to map is the employee name, right? This is our lookup value here to match that exact item. So let's go and make sure we are choosing the employee name from SharePoint when the item was created. And the last bit here, what do I want to change? What do I want to update? Just this approved option here, right? We can do update to approved right here to yes. And actually, we can put in our date of approval. And so in this case, for our date of approval, we're going to put in today's date. So I'll come into my expression to capture today's date, and we can put in UTC now, which captures the current time and date. What I also want to make sure I'm doing is a little bit of add hours here to UTC now, because I'm on the East Coast of the US, and the way it returns UTC now for me is West Coast time. So I'm going to go ahead and add some hours there. Okay, so that looks good there. Date of approval is good. We're going to update that item. We're good there. The last bit is what happens if we don't get the approval, right? What happens? I can come in here and choose add an action. And let's just say I want to send an email. Okay, and for this case, I'm going to come here, send an email. I'm going to make it nice and short and sweet. I'll send it back to the person who created the form response there, responder's email, and my subject, your recent device request was rejected, right? And again, so working with the approvals give us a lot of options here. Not only can I just send an email, let them know it is rejected, I can say, and I'm going to go nice and quick here, your request was rejected by, and you can put in from our approvals connector here, the dynamic content that's automatically been captured. And you can see right here, responses approver ID, responses approver name. So you can actually point to whoever said approve, reject, deny, confirm, whatever it might be. And you can point to them right here. So now the person knows who exactly said yes or no, right? So I can add in here responses approver name. What you'll notice, it'll automatically give us an apply to each loop because there's multiple people to send out to, and there may be in some cases multiple responses, right? Depends on the way your approval set up. So we can add that in there. Okay, got it there. And then I can also put in here, let's see, details of the response. And I can put that in here as well. And you could come down here, there's a summary of the responses, but I like to put in the comments, right? Responses, comments added by the approver. What did they say of like, why was it rejected, right? So it gives us all of that information here to be able to work with. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. And let's take a look at how this works, right? We should be able to test this flow from here as we work through all of these steps to add in our approval process. So in order to test this, I'm going to come in the upper right-hand corner and select test. I'm just going to submit a new response, and we'll see exactly how it goes. I'm going to respond to it myself because I've sent it to myself, and then we'll see if I'm going to give myself a new computer or not. Okay, so here it goes. We've now created our flow. We're testing. There it is. I'm going to come to my form here. I'll put myself in here. I will, let's see, I'm going to go with a new battery this time. And then reason for request, my battery doesn't charge. Something like that, right? We'll put in today's date. There it is. And then I'm going to hit submit. There, it's been submitted. If I come back to my flow, what I'm expecting to see, oh, that was fast, right? Our flow, we can see the steps that have now been accomplished. It's now saying we are waiting for the approval. Okay, it's start and wait for the approval action is there. So if I come to my list here and I just do a little quick refresh on my device order, there it is. It's already been added. Those steps are working great. I have my email with my approval that should be coming in. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And I just got it. Here it is. And let me try to open it up here. There it goes. This is the email that comes in when I want to interact with the approval. Now I can open up my desktop app for Teams. I can look in here in Power Automate and do approvals right there, and it pops up. There's a lot of places for me to interact with this, but you can see here's our information. So you have your employee name, what they want, why do they want it, date of request. I didn't do any formatting of that date there, and I can choose approve or reject. And for this case, let's say I want to approve it. I can come in here and say, sure, why not, right? I didn't add in the email, the response back to them, like the comments, but if I did, they would be able to see this. I can hit submit. And one of the great things about this approval flow here is it automatically switches the email on you. This is the same email. I haven't done anything, but now I can't interact with this approval anymore, right? It's done. The entire process is complete. You can even see my flow is successful because the approval has been interacted with. In fact, I've just gotten another email right there with that information about my approval. And I'll zoom in on that. Sent to myself, from myself. It's okay. There is my device made on the date that I formatted with some expression language there. Okay. And this expression language I did some format date time for that. Okay. And then I chose the column I want to format. And then the way I wanted to format it with a single quote, use 2 M's for our month, capital M's, month for month, lowercase is for minute, day, and then year. Our single quotes wrapped like that. And that's how we can get to our format date. I even spelled format wrong, but that's okay. We have format date time of that column. Use some IntelliSense there. It'll automatically populate for you. It's a great way of changing the way day or year, day, month that might be automatically sent through. Okay, so I do some spelling errors here, typing a little quick, but we can always go back and edit. And that's one of the great things about Power Automate 2 is you can come back here and edit on the fly. And say I wanted to test this, if I wanted to look at it, and maybe I'll quickly look at this, my device, there it is, right? Say I want to test this once again and reject my request. So I'll come back in here. I can choose another manual test from the beginning, or I can choose an automatic test from a previously used trigger that was working there. I'll do a manual one just to make a new one here. Hit test. I'll go back to my form and submit another response. Okay, there it goes, start to spin. I love to see it spin because sometimes it doesn't like it when I don't. I'll put in myself again. I will put in this time, I want a full laptop, not just the battery. I want a brand new one. And because I need it. Sure I do. Well, right? Why not? We'll put in today's date as well. Pass that through. There's our response was submitted. I should see that my flow steps are now going to go pretty quickly up until there, the approval. That's our pause, wait for something to happen. I should be getting an email with that approval really quickly here. And in fact, what I can also do is show you if I'm working on the Teams app, the approvals app inside of Teams, what I can do is I can interact with that approval as well. And here it comes. There's There's my approval right there that I could see inside of the Teams app, the approval app here. You can just select to add new apps. Do you approve of this order, this new one that's been added in? It's the same thing, but now I can go ahead and see it here inside of Teams as well. There's the same approvals app that we see here. Notice that these are the same connectors that we're getting through Power Automate. Okay, and this time I'm going to have my comments here, not this time, and hit reject. And you'll see here that if I come here and reject this, it's automatically updating itself, rejected. I can go put that Teams away. And you'll notice I've just gotten another email. Your request was rejected by this individual, and there's their response, right? So it's run successful. I was able to work with the approval in this case to see everything go from start to finish. You can even open up your condition, see which branch it went into, the false, because it was rejected. That means it came in here and sent this email that I've added in here to be able to see all that data with. So working with approvals, really, really great here. I can even come to my, you can see here, look, it was approved, it was updated as well. Really great to streamline the process. Essentially anything you've done on paper, you're now doing it very quickly with approvals. So what a great feature we have. Okay, so there's approvals. The next thing I want to show you is one of the actions that I use more than a lot of others. It's on a daily basis. I use this action all the time, and that is the compose data operation. Okay, the compose action, it's a data operation, is something that's great here inside of Power Automate that lets us as a user build expressions that can generate an object like a JSON. We can generate an array. We can generate other expressions. We can format dates and time. We can just write in a text field and return a text field. We can use a number, an integer. That they're really great for generating code or generating dynamic content. Really great for troubleshooting to check like what I did up there, did that actually come out correctly? So I can just see what it looks like. And that's validating your output to make sure things are actually working the way that you intend them. So using compose is it's a really, really great feature for us to build with and something that we can get right on right away. So what I'm gonna do is create a brand new flow that is going to use the compose action in a couple different ways. All right, so for our flow here, the flow that I'd like to do, that I like to create, is a flow that essentially sends out a weekly digest of information. Say that I have my devices here on my SharePoint list, and I have all of these that have not been approved yet, right? I have all of these. What if I want to send out an email to a manager, whoever it may be, and let them know, like, hey, there's all these approvals that you haven't actually interacted with. Like, we're still waiting for your approval before we can go finish the process itself. So we can set up a weekly digest, a daily digest that works on a scheduled trigger, a recurrence trigger, to send out that information every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe just once a week, maybe every single day at specific times to be able to organize that. So that's what I'm going to build here real quick and show how we can use the compose data operation to get this to work perfectly for us. So for this one, we'll call this our device order, and we'll do our weekly digest. And I will start it today and run it every day at, let's see, let's pick a good time. We're not going to do every day. We'll do once a week at 9 a.m. and we'll do it on Tuesdays. Okay, so every Tuesday at 9 a.m. starting today. So it's actually going to run next Tuesday, be the first time it runs all automatically by itself. Then we can choose create here. And as we build out this digest, what we want to do is go ahead and get the items on our SharePoint list and then use those items, okay, to send out an email that has all the descriptive values, right? So we're going to come in here and choose our recurrence trigger. Our new step will be our get items. And we'll do that from SharePoint. So I want the entire list. So I'm going to get all of the items rather than just one single value. And I'm going to point to my SharePoint site and my SharePoint list that we're going to point to, that we're working with, and my SharePoint list that we're going to point to, that we're working with. What I also want to do is I'm going to add in a little bit of a query filter, or a filter query. We're going to do a little bit of an OData filter query to make sure that we're only returning the items that are not approved. Okay, so in order to do that, I need to add in that filter right there. Now, how do I design that? Well, it's just using some logical expression language here. What I would like to do is make sure I'm pointing to this approved column. And to get to the approved column, it's a little bit tricky, especially working with SharePoint. Sometimes finding how it's being called in SharePoint to be able to use in Power Automate isn't the easiest way. What I like to do to make sure I'm always getting the accurate representation of each column name, maybe the employee name, approved, whatever it might be, is go into my list settings here in SharePoint. And when you select your list settings, we can go in and choose that column itself that we want to check. And inside of our URL here at the top, you can see it says field equals. Equals, that is the actual name of this column and how it's being stored here that we can call out to. So I'm going to just copy that right there and use that inside of my flow. And then I can come back into my list here when I'm done. I can come to my flow and then just paste that in. That is the actual item that I'm trying to check. And I could say, okay, that column, the approved column, is it equal, EQ, equal to 0? Okay, it's a Boolean, true, false. 0 is not there. 1 is there, right? If you're looking through yes, no. Okay, so we're going to filter that query there. And then send an email. Hit a new step, send an email. Okay, now as we do this, some of the things to think about when we send this email. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and send it to myself. Okay, I'm going to say device order that needs approval. And I can choose in the body all of the different options I want, right? And if I do this, I could do employee. I can choose my employee name. You'll see it's going to give me an apply to each because I'm getting all of these items. So it might be multiple. So that'll do is send out multiple emails each time, right? One for each request. And that's not going to be great. I know if I do that, Devin or Brian are going to come back to me like, I don't want 15 emails every week, right? That's the last thing they want. Can you consolidate all of the different items into one email? Send me that inside of one email so I'm not getting, blasted spam with all these emails. So if that's the case, doing it just like this it's just not going to work. So what we need to do is change the structure of this. So I'm actually going to remove this send an email because that's not what I want to do. What I'd like to do is first create a table that I can use inside of an email that stores all those values so I can send one email and not 15, 5, whatever it might be. And we can use an action here to create HTML table. And I'm going to choose that right here, create HTML table. And now I can choose where I'm going to pull the table from. Well, I'm going to create the table from all the values that I've grabbed in from my SharePoint list. So that's our value list of items, okay? All the different ones that we want. So there it is. So now that I'm going to create the table there, I can select show advanced options and design the table how I want to see it. Automatic will just bring back every single column, which I don't really care to do. So I'm going to do custom. And now I can design the table structure within the header and the value of this table. So for my header, maybe this is where I want to put my employee name. And oh, look here, I'm hitting the space bar, but it doesn't let me put in spaces. Now I could just use it and say, all right, whatever, I can't put in spaces, it'll end up showing up anyway, but that's not great, right? That's for usability and for what we want. I want this to look nice, right? You want this to look presentable. If you want to set that up where you can have the employee name with a space, we can't just do it straight in here. What we need to do is we're going to add in a step here, and this is where we're going to use our compose. We're just going to essentially create an action here that allows us to design the employee name, whatever format that we want to see. So I'll use that data operation for compose. And here I'm just going to literally say employee name. Just that's it. And I'll rename my compose as well. This is another great usability feature here. Rename the action itself so that every time you go find that in your dynamic content, it's going to show up just like that. Okay, so I'll rename this for our compose employee name. So now I can come into my create table, remove that, and then just simply point to, there it is. There's our employee name from our compose with the space in it. So now I can go into my value here and choose my employee name, right? That's really great, nice and simple there. I can do the same thing here if I wanted to have in my next one. Maybe I'll put in device. Okay, like what is the device here? And in my value here, we can point to our device value, right? That's the selected choice there in the choice column. And then maybe I want one more. In this case, I would like to put in my date of, again, I forgot about the spaces. All right, let's just do another one. Let's do another compose here. Take this compose, we'll do another edition of it, add an action, compose, and just design the way that we want this to look. I want date of request to look just like that. Now I can use compose to look just like that. Now I can use compose, and I'll rename this to include it as well, date of request, to capture that, this case is a string value, to pass through here. And now we can just put it inside of our table, compose date of request. And now I can put in my date. And I'm going to do the same format date time that I've been doing a couple of times to show the dates the proper way. So it's format date time in our expression. There are open and close parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, this is where we put our dynamic content. And we can come down here and, oh, it's not showing up. Well, what can we do in order to get that? Guess what? We can use another compose in order to pass that through, or I bet here's a shortcut, right? Watch this. If I just come in here and put my date of request, and it's just generic value here for dynamic content, I'm going to just copy this, highlight it, Control C. And now what I can do is add that into my expression here. So watch that, format, date, time. Now inside of here, I can just paste it. And there it is. There's my item that I want. I can just remove the @ sign that designates a specific item. And now I can put in my single quote, month, day, year. There it is. Add that in there. That looks good. There's my table that's been added in. So now what I can do is go send that email with this one single table. Simple, simple, simple. So we're going to hit new step. We're going to come in here and send an email. And we'll do it nice and short and quick here. A nice little email. Subject is your outstanding approvals. And we can put in here, please respond to these as soon as possible. Right? And what I can do, I'll put that in bold too, right? They need to know about that. What we can do is just come down here and insert in our table. There it is. There, we're going to add the output from our created HTML table, add that in here to be able to see the table that gets sent into, or the table that we've created with all of those different responses, right? We're filtering it down by the ones that aren't approved, and then we're going to go ahead and send that email, right? So let's come and test this real quick and see what we get, and then we should be good, unless we need to fix things, right? We'll kind of play with it. So the next one here is, let's going to test this. We'll do a manual test just right now. Let's see. I want to get the email right now. Run the flow. Come on in here and get items. Compose all of these and send me that email. Where is my email? I just came in. Here is, oh, there it is. So here is our table that we've created with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different items that are not approved. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different items that are not approved. Those are the 5 that we have. That looks great. Now what we need to do is come back in here to our flow and take a look at this output. There's our table. It's okay. It's fine. It's not that nice though, right? Let's be honest with ourselves. It's not that nice. What if we could come in here and format the table to look pretty cool, right? To have some colors and fonts and all the styling we want to have in here. And if we want to do that, we're going to just come in here and hit edit. And what we can do is, as we edit this, is we can add in a step before we send the email. I'm going to do another action here with compose, right? This is all about compose here. How we can use compose to create, I want to do a format a table with CSS styling, right? And we can add in our inputs here some styling, which I have, and I have a notepad file stored with our CSS styling. Okay, I'm just going to copy all of these and check out our course files if you want to take a look at this specific one. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm just going to paste it in here. And now you can see here we have our border color, our background color. You can see our table, border and padding, and the font sizes all laid out in our styling. And if I come into my email, if I want to add that styling to the table, all I need to do is make sure that the compose action is placed before the HTML table action. So here's my HTML table action. I need to put the compose before it, right? So put the compose this item essentially. And we can come in here, format that, outputs output. That looks good. Let's hit save and try it again. And let's take a look at the difference in those tables. And I think this one's going to look way nicer for us. Right here, we're going to hit test, manual, test, and run it. Could have done a recent, but there's our run. Let's take a look. It's going to go ahead and do, there it is, nice and fast. Where's my email? Come on, nice and quick. Look at that. I mean, isn't that better? Right now we have that styling in here. Here's a table. We can change the color. We can change the font. We can change all that stuff. You're just working with some others and put them in there. Make a nice little table. You can talk about the size and do you want it center aligned or left aligned and how you're formatting. But it looks much, much better now than it did before when we were just adding in that table. This is a really great one that we're going to get every single week with the table in it that we can always have that up-to-date information for. And every time it goes, it's just going to check to make sure if it's not been approved and then only produce those inside of our table, right? So it's a pretty cool one here to be able to use compose a lot in here to get to that weekly digest that we want to see. All right, not bad. All right, so there's our compose action. So we've already talked about working with solutions. We talked about approvals. We talked about compose. The next step for us is to work with some nulls and some null values. And so in order to do this, and this is going to lead into our last one with trigger conditions, what we are going to do is come back and I'll introduce how we can work with nulls and different expressions. What we're going to do is we're going to start to use the two expressions length and empty. Both of these are really, really great for checking null values or missing items within a table or a specific cell, depending upon where we want to make that check. The length expression itself is what's going to check the length of a string or an array, like a table itself, to see if there's anything on that table or that list that you're pulling. Right? You can see if it has values or not. And then from there, based upon that check, go down a path or not, right? You can add in a condition with that. The empty expression does essentially the same thing, but it checks if a variable, a field, a cell is empty, right? One specific item, and then it will return true or false from there. So based upon if is empty, all right, empty and going to go through down that path, we can then decide how we want our flow to run from that point forward. Okay, so what we're going to do is work with a flow that is, it's a really great flow that I love to use all the time because it has a lot of different use cases that has a manual trigger, and we'll kind of play around with how this is going to work here. So I'm going to go back to our flows here. And for this next one that I want to show you, it's a little bit of a different scenario, not quite our device order right now. This one, it's a very, very simple time card, okay? Say you want to track when your employees are clocking in and out of the office or the warehouse or wherever they are when they get to a job site. Instead of having that old paper one hanging on the wall, you can't carry that around with you. You can set it up in a flow, and you can have it within a button on a tablet or a phone, or you can have it somewhere in the office on a computer that every time someone comes in, they log in, run the flow, and it will clock them in. You can see I have a couple here from the last few days here. And what we can see here is if we run this flow, and I'm going to go get my flow there. Okay, go to my flows here. what we're going to get within our device order here, it's this one right here called employee time card clock in. And if I come in here and I come in and just show you what the flow looks like, it's very, very simple. 2 steps. That's it. Okay, I have 2 single steps in this flow. Manually trigger the flow, push a button, and create an item. Very simple. It works. It will simply, if I hit test and manually perform it right now, it will absolutely add in a new item on the SharePoint list. It's very simple 2-step process for me to come in here and I can see there is my new action there, right? It's added in fast, simple, efficient. But what if I come back here tomorrow and I forgot to clock out today? Do I want my user to be able to add in another one for tomorrow, but they forgot to clock out from yesterday? Well, maybe yes, but then you're like, well, how am I supposed to get them to clock out, right? What if we wanted to stop a user from being able to clock in the next day or another time if they didn't already clock out prior to this, right? And then maybe send them a notification like, hey, you need to clock out first, or go see your supervisor and make sure you override the clock out first before you're allowed to clock in today. Get that done right now before we forget about it and just this keeps happening over and over. Well, the flow in its current state doesn't help us with that, right? That's not something we can do right now. What we need to do is add a way to make sure that we can, check if that value is there. So what we'll do is we're going to add in a few steps here, right? And the first step we'll add in here is I want to make sure I go get all the items first from that list in order to validate if there is actually a clock out time. So I'm going to add an action and we're going to choose get items. When we choose get items, right, get all of the items, get the entire list, return that list. I'll go point to it real quick. Here's my list name. This is my time card. What I want to do is come down here to my filter query and filter this down to only match who's currently logged in and to return only their recent log, time card logs there. So we're going to do title, which is the default value here in SharePoint. Okay, that is stored here as title. Okay, title equals, in this case, I'm just going to point to the username. Some single quotes around that because we work with our dynamic content and our filter query. And we need those single quotes around it. And then what I'll also do is order this entire list in descending order. So the most recent first. So I'll do it by ID. I'm going to order it in a descending order. And then I only want to return the most recent one, right? I only care about yesterday. Because if it happened 3 days ago, then we didn't do our work the day after, right? We have to check just for yesterday because then we'll figure out tomorrow after that. So I'm just going to return one of them. So in this case, there's our filter here. We are going to return it for the current user, order from the most recent, and just one of them. And then from here, we can add in a condition. And in action here, a condition that we can use to check this status is we get to see if the clock out from our dynamic content, our clock out time is equal, and it's because we have a get items, it's always going to do our apply to each. Okay, our clock out is equal to null. All right, I can either put it in an expression. I like to use the expression when I can just to make sure it comes in, is equal to null. And so if the clock out is equal to null, I don't want them to go ahead and add in a new one. I want nothing to happen. If I want, I can send a notification. I can do something. But if this is false, if the clock out is not equal to null, which means that it's been populated there, then I want to go ahead and create that item. All right, so go ahead and add that in there in order to check this status, right? Or we're going to go ahead and make that check. So we're going to hit save here and I'll test this. I'm going to test it real quick to be able to see this, or I'll actually do a quick send email just so I can have some type of validation. Okay. And I'll do it to, okay, no clock out, just something like that. Right. We'll do another quick save and test. And we'll trigger our flow. And what I should get is this email because I didn't clock out yet, right? I didn't come here and I didn't clock out. So I'll test, a manual test, hit another test there, and continue, run that flow. And let's see, do we get our flow to run properly? There, it's run successfully. Which way do we go in our condition? It's true because we missed it. So that means I got an email that says nothing, right? It didn't clock out. So how do I fix that? Well, I do have a clock out flow that we can build, and we can just go get items and update item based upon the user or whatever. I can just kind of come here and do this real quick and say that I'm clocking out soon. Let's call it today's date, and we'll do 12:20, right? Or I'd say it's 12:14. We'll do that one. And then save that. And now I'm going to run the flow again and do another quick little test. And we should be able to see it from here. And done. And the flow's run successful. Where did we go? Well, we created that item, right? Because the expression is false. There we've created the item on our list here. Here we're looking at it. I'm going to there it goes, refresh. It should go ahead and create that new item. There it is, right? So we're adding in that new item right there. Not bad, works great. Now, the other question is, well, oh my goodness, well, what if this list is empty? What if I don't have any items to get in the first place? Like, what if I came in here and said, you know what, all these are gone. And if I try to run this flow again, what's going to happen is if I hit run here, we are not going to get past this get items because there's nothing to get. There's just simply, it's empty. Well, if that's the case and you're starting from scratch here, if you have it refreshes every week, every quarter, whatever it is, we need to do some other things here. What we need to do is be able to check whether the value there, that we actually have anything existing in our list here. So we have to add in another condition here before we even go down this apply to each step. So we're going to add in a condition. In this case, what we'll do is we're going to check whether we have anything on the list. So I'll do a quick rename here. Check if list is empty. So in this case, our condition to check, we are going to use our length expression. The length of what we're returning here, the value list of items, okay, the entire value there is equal to, oh, we can't use equal to because that's an exact. Let's say if is it greater than, right? Is it greater than 0? And if it's greater than 0, if there is something on the list, right, then we can go back in and do everything we've done before, right? Because there's something to pull, and then we can go down the progression. If there's nothing on the list, what do we want to do? We'll just create a new one, create the very first item on that list. So we can come back down here and we could just copy to clipboard on that create an item. We can utilize some of the pre-built plumbing here in Power Automate, take this, copy to my clipboard, and then add an action here and use my clipboard. There it is. And you can see if I click on that, if it does it right, everything closes up, okay, it goes away. And now I can see I create my item once again. So now, because my list is empty, I can make sure that I can always have new items added, no matter if it's empty, if I clear it out every once in a while, if there's values in there, and even checking to see if our clock out time is actually there or not. So we can do our manual test once again. Here's a new one, run the flow. And from here, because it's empty, we should just go down that first no path. There it is. It is empty. And then if I were to do it again, it should do nothing. If I come to this, do it once again, it should do nothing because we did not clock out, right? So we're using some of our built-in checks here to help us understand how things are working, right? To understand how things are being built. So the last big component, the last big piece here that I want to talk about today with our top 5 features within Power Automate, right? We've already talked about solutions. We've talked about the approvals. We talked about being able to work with compose and working with nulls. The very last one for us today is understanding how to utilize trigger conditions. So when we work with trigger conditions, what it allows us to do is essentially circumvent the step of a condition, right? The condition control. Instead of testing something and then running the flow from there, what we're doing is utilizing that test before the flow even starts. We are going to test that condition. So if the condition is true or false, we either run the flow or not. What that allows us to do, utilizing the trigger condition, is to make sure that we're actually, what we're doing is we're saving money. Let's be honest, right? We have less API calls, the API call that from one service to another. So we have less that are put against our license with Power Automate. And it also makes it, oh my goodness, so much easier to read, so much easier for us to build with. Okay. Now, one of the things that keep in mind when working with trigger conditions is we need to make sure that the condition that we use, the logical expression that we use for our condition, has the @ sign on it right before it. Okay. To make sure that it's actually calling out an expression. That's how it's utilized here in Power Automate. Now, I have a little bit of a pro tip for you. In order to get that condition perfectly made, there's a really easy step for us, and that is to use the filter array action. It's a data operation, the filter array, in order to generate that code automatically, and we just copy and paste it. It's super simple for us to do. That's exactly what we're going to do here in our very last little explanation or little demo here before we end for today. Okay, so what we'll do is go ahead and jump in, create our trigger condition, and utilize that moving forward. Now, the way that we're going to do this is I want to show you a flow that I have already and how crazy it is with everything that's pre-built. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and go to my flows real quick. I'm going to show you one that's already done and all the craziness that I have built into it. So I'm going to come in here and we're going to call this is our Lord the Nerds. Let's see, this one with our null check. Okay, I'm gonna take a look. I'll turn this one on real quick and come here and edit this. Let's see, make sure it's still on. It does take a second sometimes. Okay, you can see that I've done some editing and fixing things because I was getting some crazy results. But for this flow, what I wanted to do, my purpose of this flow here was that when an item is created or modified in SharePoint, in this case, actually what I focus on was I want anytime we update an item on that SharePoint list from our device order, anytime the manager comes in here and approves it, maybe after the fact, I want to take specific orders and write them into an Excel worksheet. I only wanted to focus on the 3 expensive ones, a laptop battery, and a monitor. Okay, for the device order. Focus on those 3, filter down. I only care about those right here for this Excel spreadsheet. So what I did was I created a flow that every time an item was created or modified, right? You can see I don't have any other steps here. I got that item, okay, by the ID there. Then I did a compose to check for a null. And then in here, what I had to do to check for a null, we have a lot of if the output equals null, then provided a 0, otherwise provided a 1. And then I had to come in here and take pass that compose to check for nulls into my condition here, okay, written in here, and then I can have for my outputs, there's my check for nulls equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, then I was like, here's my check. Oh my goodness, then it's created and not modified, so that didn't work. Oh, but if it wasn't equal to 0 and it was that we had that null that was not there, that was actually modified, then check for these 3 values. If those values are there, if it's a laptop battery, or a monitor, then add that to our table. Otherwise, send an email as another check. This should not be on the Excel table. All right, I went through and I built this, and I'm sitting in there. I'm like, man, there's so many things to add in here to make all these checks. It'd be really helpful if there was an easier way to do this. Right? It would be really helpful for this to work. Like if I can show you how it works here. Test here. We're going to look at our SharePoint site here that we have. Let's say I come back in here and go to Erica's right there. Let me make sure my flow it's going to wait for me there. Let's see if it's going to work here. Sometimes this one's going a little bit slow. I'm going to come into Erica here. I'm going to approve it. There it is. My date of approval I'll put into today's date, right? That's saved, good. Everything's running, right? We're having our flow working here. And what I'm expecting here is there it is. Or the one that I just added there is added already because that's the one we just did with the approval. And you can see that I'm going to have that added in here as well once it gets all the way completed, right? And so I'll have Erica added in there too. It looks like it's running, but it's not running, having a, let's see, 2 minutes ago. That's the one we saw there, right? So it's run successful there. And you can see it's checking for nulls and maybe it didn't find it for one of them. And then it's going to come in and this one's taking a second to run. Okay. And what I'm wanting to do is to write into Excel. And it just takes a while, right? It just kind of goes through a process. So what I'm going to do is turn this off and find a better way to do this, to this entire step. And the better way to do all of that, to check all those things, the conditions and nulls, is to use a trigger condition, is to allow the pre-built plumbing inside of Power Automate to do all the work for us. So setting up a trigger condition, I have a flow. I'm going to turn off a couple of these. So let's turn this one off here. And I have a flow here called device order trigger condition approved to Excel. So there's nothing in it yet. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on real quick. I'm going to hit edits. And for this one, okay, you'll see that I just kind of took the basic steps. When an item is created, test this condition of the 3 items I want to write into Excel. If it's one of these 3, and I'll put this as an or, then write it to Excel, regardless, right? That's the kind of basic steps that we have here. If not, do nothing. Simple as that. With what I can do here to test if the values have been changed, because I want to do the modified, what I can just simply add in is a trigger condition so the flow won't even run unless that approved or approval date has been modified. Everything else just does nothing. So to test that, what we can do is we can come in here and add an action to insert a filter array. And the filter array data operation is my little trick here of being able to create the code in order to use inside of our trigger condition. And I'm going to ignore this, the array to filter, ignore that. I'm just going to use the conditional step there. And I'll choose my value here. And this is where we're going to come into our expression and say, if we're going to use some equals here, because we're going to say the equals, we're going to use the, let's come here and check on let's use the date of approval. That's an easy one to check. If the date of approval, so I'll come in here with my dynamic content and grab that, the date of the approval, right there, is null. Okay, and we'll call this, if this is null, I will put it, right here. Oh, there we go. If that's null, then I want to yield a 0. Okay, if it's true, give it a 0. If it's not true, else give it a 1. Okay, that's my test, right? So is it true or false? Is it there or not? Is it null or not? And I'll add that in there. There's my condition, nice and simple. What I can also do is say, all right, if that is true or false, if that is equal to 1, which means it's false, that it's not null, okay, I want to use that as my trigger condition. So I've essentially just created an ability to define some test here. If my date of approval is equal to null, then give it a 0. If it's not equal to null, which means there's an actual approval date in there, give it a 1. Now I'm going to test if that test is equal to 1. If I put in here edit in advanced mode, look what I've just generated. That right there is the code I can use to copy and paste inside of my trigger condition. So now all I have to do is come here in my, when an item is created, go into my settings, and we can come in here for trigger conditions and paste right there. Automatically set up in the format we need. Nice and simple to use. I can hit done. And I have now gotten rid of all those extra conditions and compose actions, anything that I need inside of this in order for this flow to run. And I can just get rid of this filter array because I don't need it anymore. Save this and run it. Save, there it is. And I'm going to do a test. And let's take a look at this. We're going to modify an item on our list. This is going to start to spin, so we're seeing our test. And once we modify it, it should go ahead and write this into Excel. So let's pick one. I'll come here and choose Christian. And actually, this is not Matt's mouse or keyboard, so that's not going to run. Let's find one. Let's do Michael Smith here. There's a monitor. I want to make sure it runs into Excel there. We're going to do that. We're going to choose a date. We'll choose today's date. There it's saved. There it is. There's our modification. We come to our flow. We're now hoping that it checks for that modification. It recognizes, there it is. There's our modification. It's allowing the flow to run. It's true because it passed my condition. Here's my device order. Boom, Michael Smith right there. If I were to do this again and test it to see if it was a different one, nothing would happen. It would just keep spinning and spinning and spinning. If I come back in here to my list and I go here to Christian and I say, oh yeah, yours was approved too. Like, yeah, I forgot. I could put yours in here. Nothing's going to happen because it does not pass the condition and nothing else gets pulled each time. If I were to add a new item, nothing happens, right? It's allowing us to do the same things we want, but just much more efficiently than ever before. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, taking a look at what I consider the top 5 Power Automate features, things that you can use right now in your steps and in your process of working within Power Automate to help you design your flows, to get them all organized, ready to go, to get you the exact values you're looking for, to get you exactly what you need so you can go focus on all those other tasks you have that actually take, the human mind to accomplish. I appreciate everything. Look forward to some new videos coming out to us here in the future from Pragmatic Works, from myself and from Devin as we work with Power Automate on every single day. We try to give back and do as many videos as we can here to let you have some more information and give you some tips and insights along the way. Thanks again for joining us. I appreciate everything and see you around, everyone. Bye now.